What's going on, everyone? Ryan here, and today I'm addressing a highly requested video, which is the 2-Rock Traditional Clean, borrowing from a friend, thank you, and the John Mayer Signature. And this is my personal build and clone of a real John Mayer Signature. I call it the Fairfield County Signature. So if you've been following along in my channel, you're going to know a lot about this amplifier and how much research and development went into it to make sure that I'm one for one the exact same circuit as the real John Mayer Signature. Now, what I'm going to do on this journey of ours we're going to take together is scientifically try to understand the output of both of these amplifiers. Not just the preamp, not just the power amp, but the total thing about these amplifiers and comparing them against each other sort of in a scientific way, using my oscilloscope, my signal generator, and Google Sheets to do the overlay. So it's going to be kind of nerdy, going to be kind of fun. It's going to be definitely have some ups and downs, and I can't wait to get excited so I can stop with all these messages asking me to do this video. But overall, I really appreciate it, and you guys are so funny, and girls, and everyone. So let's get into it. First thing I'm going to do is take this load box, which is emulating a speaker, but it's going to be static load, it's not going to be reactive load, and I built two of them. And we're going to take these, connect up the amplifiers, and inside here is actually 4 4-ohm 100-watt resistors. Hook up the amplifiers, going to run my oscilloscope, generate a frequency sweep, do a Bode plot. So basically it's a frequency and amplitude response recording device thing. So it's going to look like an EQ curve on the end. So let's get going. Okay, running a plot now. Got the amps turned on. Actually, just one amp. Just gonna do my. If I'm gonna blow up a amplifier, I'd rather do one that I built. And this thing is getting warm very quickly. So I'm not gonna take any chances, I think. You can see I made a little bit of a separation in the back to let some heat out, but it's still, whoa. Alright. I'm going to turn this thing off. Start thinking about it. Alright, I'm not too crazy about how hot this thing got. I mean, I'm maximizing the amount of potential transfer, heat transfer going in here, and I've even made a little bit of a lift and separation so heat can escape from this thing. I'm just not confident, especially because this is not mine and I'm borrowing it from a friend, and I'm okay with blowing up my own amplifier, but definitely not his. So I think I'm going to change my strategy up a little bit, and I'm going to use my Boss tube amp expander to actually do a reactive load. And then I'm going to use some software using my Mac and see what kind of settings I can come up with so I can do a raw capture out of there minus an IR impulse response. Alright, here's my setup. And this is, I guess, attempt number 2 at capturing this. And I feel a lot more better about this approach. And just to let you know, here's my scope, here's the signal generator. And then that signal generator, it splits a signal, one that goes here for reference, and then the other one goes directly into the front end of this amplifier. The impedance on here is high Z impedance. And here's my first settings for testing out the Mayer sort of thing, just to get an idea of what's going on. And then I'll start doing a little bit more scientific approach. So plug that in, and then the output of this goes into the Boss tube amp expander, and here is my reactive load settings here, and those, you know, according to my ears, sound pretty close to a G1265. And then here's my app. Here's the Ways a Tube expander editor, and you can tell that there's no sort of simulations applied, no cab sims, no nothing. And it's going straight out to the front of house on the back here. and then that front of house of the tube amp expander goes into the return or the device under test, the DUT, which is recording the response. So here's my first, and it's number 18 for my file names. I'm going to save the files to the drive and then do my analysis. So here's kind of like just the first test, and then I'll be taking both amps at noon. So all the settings will be at noon, except for the reverb. And the reason for I can't do the reverb is the reverb is unpredictable from a sort of measurement standpoint, so I need to turn them off. So I'm going to have the same thing, maybe treble on, treble here, noon, 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 gain, master at noon, presence, master, gain, and let's see what happens on our charts. I will have to do these individually, one by one, and overlay them on Google Sheets at some point here, but that's just what I'm going to have to do instead of doing 2 load boxes measuring at the same time. And I'll make sure that these are... One thing to note too is that these pots, all pots are 20% tolerance. I know that 2Rock measures their pots and then chooses accordingly. I did the same here. I measured my pots and installed accordingly based on what the John Mayer signature has. And funny enough, this has a very similar pot arrangement where this is high, that's low, and this is a normal pot stuff. So, get a lot of cool things going on here. Let's get testing. Okay, so here's all the attempts that I've taken, probably 7. And the blue is the JM Sig. And you'll notice there's nothing that really comes close except for maybe this one. And that is number 5. And what does number 5 look like? Isolated, it looks like this. It's not great. It's not, I wouldn't even call this a great representation because there's obviously more going on. There's definitely more mids that you're going to hear. It's not as scooped. But just for fun, here's the settings for that. And here's the settings for the JM Sig again. These are all at noon except for reverb, contour, this, and this. Here is that equivalent. But again, you're not getting that same amplitude. You're not getting the same feel that the JM Sig has in this amp. So you really have to kind of work that treble and middle knob almost all the way down. The presence does shift that mid hump a little bit, but middle seems to be okay. I would even maybe knock that presence down a little bit to shift it over just a little bit more. And that's what you're looking at. That's as close as I'm going to get. All right, now here comes the fun part, and that's actually listening between these 2 amps, and I'm going to toggle between these 2 amps using my foot switch and the radial engineering tool behind me. Same setup as before. I'm going to have both amps going into the Boss tube amp expander. I'm going to use the onboard reverb on the tube amp expander and not between the amps, just because I don't want that to, increase a bias of one amp towards another. So we're going to listen to the dry output of both of those amps. And then I'm going to toggle through a few different selections of JM Sig settings in concert that I've observed throughout the years in just different eras of using this amp to complement other amps. Now the big key here is that just remember that this amp did complement other amps on stage, so that's going to impact kind of like the overall sound of that. So now we're just isolating this one particular amp individually versus this particular amp individually, and we're going to find out if the design of this amp and this amp are pretty similar or if they're distinctly different. So sit back and let's just get going here. Let's just get going here. My guitar today is a Genesis pickups filled parts caster, and I'm going through one pedal only, and that's my Dead Man's Hand buffer. by now you probably figured out that these two amplifiers are completely different. Completely different, in my opinion. So let's just take this most recent setting. And I know I haven't really gone through many settings, and I think that's all right. But let's just see if we can dial in this traditional clean to match the sounds that we got coming out of this. So what I do find kind of interesting is like the clarity of traditional clean. I mean, definitely you can see in the graphs that there's a little bit more of an even sort of mid-range, where this amp sort of dumps that mid-range and has that scoop, so the lows are really lows and the highs are really great and chimey. But what's interesting is I found this setting, and this is from John's 2013 tour, I'm pretty sure, where the treble was up really high. And when I tried this setting, it sounded like really kind of crystal clear, like I did over here with the traditional clean. So let's give it a listen and see if I can actually get the Mayer sig to sound like the chime and the kind of mid-range that the traditional clean has. Now, I might have not captured at all of these different settings, and obviously there's an infinite amount of settings that you can kind of go through, but I am going to put on my Google Drive, and the link is in the description below, all the raw data points of each of these amps and the settings and then pictures and everything, so you can actually download your own Excel sheet and play or implement those into like an impulse response in your favorite editors. I don't know what you're going to do with it, But I am going to make all those files available for free for you guys to play around and kind of see the differences here. Now that we got them pretty close and just having fun at this point, I mean, you could spend hours and hours and hours, and I'm not sure how well the audience would stick around for that sort of thing. But I'm going to actually turn on the reverb on both amps and just have some fun and just do a very small sample so you can hear the difference in the reverbs, because I feel like that's, to me, one of the biggest things besides this being super dark. And have that chimey top end and you know, all those things that you've heard about, but let's just have some fun with the reverb. I'm going to turn the reverb off on the tube amp expander, so you're just going to hear the pure reverb from both of these amps.